We're looking right now at the House floor. I have sat through many of these votes as you guys have, watching those numbers tick along. We see one present, which I think we're going to learn who that was. But in the end, Democrats more or less held together. Nobody broke. We're going to take a listen.
On this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed.
USA. Oh, we can see House Speaker Mike Johnson there. And a lot of applause from Republicans in this moment. As Doug said, there was a fractured caucus on the way to this process.
Andy Harris from Maryland, a hardliner, was the present vote. That's one he's going to have to explain, not just to the president, but to his constituents.
So I want to talk about this as even just, I'll call it a victory for the House Speaker, because there was a time where it felt like no Republican speaker could survive even the most basic votes or process, and like he's managed to do that.
That's true, and this was a speaker that came pretty much from nowhere after the chaos, after the ouster of Speaker McCarthy, and I think he has confounded the expectations of many people in building and knitting this very fractious Republican coalition together. But I think your point is a good one. A lot of the things that he had to put in this bill to get it through the House by that one vote, they're going to be very problematic for certain Republican senators, some that are running for re-election. When it comes back, it's going to be really interesting to see what it actually looks like.
What kind of pressure does this put on the Senate now, right? Because there is going to be a lot of conversations as they kind of reconcile, right, their part of the legislation. What do you think folks are going to be pointing to, talking about?
Medicaid, for sure. We've already seen op-eds that have been written by Republican Senate leaders in their local newspapers, as well as in the New York Times.
Leaders.
Yes,
okay.
Because they recognize that this is going to shut down rural health care. It is going to eradicate the already fragile healthcare system in many of their districts, particularly because there is a larger percentage of Medicaid recipients who reside in red districts than any place else. So I think that for them, they're paying attention because they know that this is going to have an effect on midterms. But moreover, their states cannot afford to lose that level of coverage.
Doug, can you talk about that?
One constant in Washington is that regardless of party, the House and the Senate usually do not see eye to eye on things.
Correct.
And this is certainly going to play out over the coming weeks when they come back from the Memorial Day recess.
Right, you're looking at high fives on the House floor, people taking pictures with the House Speaker. The reason being the breaking news. House Republicans just pushed President Trump's domestic agenda a big step forward, passing the massive tax cuts and spending bill after marathon meetings and deep internal divisions that we've talked so much about among House Republicans themselves. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, managing to keep united almost all House Republicans behind the sweeping spending bill after the Rules Committee meeting lasted almost 22 hours. 2 Republicans voted against the measure. There are big changes that were made in these marathon meetings overnight that made it capable to get the bill to this point, to the floor, and now headed over to the Senate. CNN's Lauren Fox is on Capitol Hill following all of this for us. Lauren, how did we get from there to here, and what now?
It's been a really remarkable 24 hours on Capitol Hill, especially for House Speaker Mike Johnson, who had set this incredibly ambitious deadline of getting this bill out of the House of Representatives by Memorial Day weekend. Now, so many of his members even were skeptical that this was going to be possible. Yesterday morning, you had members of the House Freedom Caucus saying that they needed another 7 to 10 days to negotiate in order to pass this bill, arguing that this deadline was really arbitrary, that the Speaker was trying to speed this up too quickly, and yet the Speaker was able to just get this finished. The Speaker is still on the floor, receiving high fives, hugs, people trying to get photographs with him as they are celebrating this victory. Republicans winning this vote 215 to 214. There were still 2 Republican holdouts, Thomas Massie and Warren Davidson, who voted against this bill because of concerns that it is adding too much to the country's deficit. But still, This is a huge victory where Speaker Johnson was able to bring some of the moderates together, some of those swing district New York Republicans together, and members of the House Freedom Caucus. And he did this in a couple of different ways. One, he gave the House Freedom Caucus what they wanted, which was expediting how quickly work requirements for Medicaid went into effect. He also moved up the deadline for how quickly some of the energy tax credits expired from the period where Joe Biden had passed his own reconciliation bill. And then, of course, for some of those New York moderates, there was an increase in how much people in their districts can deduct in state and local taxes. So this was a huge effort where every single move you make as a Republican leader, you're going to win some votes and you're going to lose some votes on the other side. So a very delicate negotiation. But like I said, 24 hours ago, this seemed improbable given the fact that a number of House conservatives were hemming and hawing about the fact that they needed more time to negotiate. I will say that usually on Capitol Hill, when you put a deadline into effect, you start moving toward it, Republicans had to make a very difficult decision. Were they going to vote against Donald Trump's agenda or not? I just spoke with one of the conservatives who had been a holdout over the weekend, and they told me Donald Trump did make a big difference here. His legislative team made a big difference here, but ultimately, Speaker Mike Johnson, who so many of his colleagues say is an extremely patient, thoughtful, slow-moving, even when things start to feel like they're building, he doesn't lose his temper. They said that that was really key to this. Democrats obviously deeply frustrated about this bill passing, warning about the coverage losses that could come from health care, warning about how much this is adding to the country's deficit, but a very big victory this morning for Speaker Mike Johnson. Kate?
Yeah, and I'm seeing right behind you, the Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is walking right past you, which I would also guess the House Speaker, which you've been really amazing at getting him to stop. The House Speaker may be passing you by in just a couple minutes as well. Let's see what this means with the big next steps forward as this heads to the Senate. Lauren, great reporting as always. Thank you so much. John?
Yeah, Politico had a great phrase. They called House Speaker Mike Johnson Magic Johnson, which is a nice way of putting it given how he worked to push this bill through. With us now from the White House, Elena Treen. And Elena, the president himself leaned on Republicans to make this happen.
Absolutely, and he made it very clear this week. Not only did he go to Capitol Hill himself to address the entire House Republican conference, he also had House Speaker Mike Johnson, as you just referred to as Magic Johnson, at the White House yesterday with some of those hardline House Freedom Caucus members to really convince them to get on board. And his message was really clear. He said a no vote on this bill would be, quote, the ultimate betrayal. And so the president made it very clear. If you're with me, you are going to vote yes on this bill. And if you're not, you're probably going to face some tough rhetoric and potentially problems down the line from his team here at the White House if you're not behind him. And that was really, I think, what helped muscle this bill through. Now, a couple of things, of course, to note. One is this bill is really going to be a crowning achievement for President Donald Trump. It's something they are talking about repeatedly. This is something they think will be a legacy-defining moment for him if it ultimately passes. It has all of the things that he talked about repeatedly on the campaign trail. One, of course, wanting to make sure that his 2017 tax cuts are made permanent. They were supposed to expire at the end of this year. But then also what he talked about with no taxes on tip, on overtime, on Social Security benefits, on auto loan interest deduction. So all of those things are in this bill. And when I talked to White House officials behind the scenes, they told me that was really what the president cared most about, getting his priorities in this. Of course, the sticking points related to how will you pay for this, and some issues that this president may face down the line is how they did ultimately try to pay for this with Medicaid cuts and also cuts to SNAP benefits, many things that people are criticizing already. But the key thing to keep in mind, John, is that this fight is not over. Yes, it is a major success for President Donald Trump, for House Speaker Mike Johnson. But this bill is going to face a lot of issues once it gets to the Senate, and it's probably going to be reworked in many different ways. And this White House knows that, and they know that they have a lot of work that is still cut out for them to make sure that this can ultimately get through and ultimately to his desk to sign. But I can tell you they're going to be very happy with this news. I am sure we are just moments away from having another Truth Social post from this president.
Yeah, look, it is a big step. There is no question about that. A long way to go. And they do have to also contend with very jittery bond markets. The great and powerful bond market very concerned about what this does to the debt. Elena Treen at the White House, thank you very much.